Hello and welcome to Property Lifestyle Mastery. On this show, we're having open and honest conversations about building a property investment business that creates not just cash flow, but also freedom. From myself and Dave, we've built a property investment company that's done over £16 million of deals over the last 10 years from a standing start. And along the way, we have experienced all the despair and all the chaos, along with all the joys and all the glory that's come from going through that process. And we're sharing the lessons that we've had, along with special guests along the way too, and how you can make sure you create your ideal lifestyle through property. So today we are joined by Nisha and Jas from Castlewood Homes. These guys are a truly special pair, and myself and Dave see so much of ourselves in these guys. Castlewood Homes is really firing on all cylinders at the moment. These guys are building a HMO portfolio in Kent, hugely passionate about delivering great quality accommodation and service to their tenants, but also really shaking things up for their investors as well, providing amazing returns through the deals that they're doing. But today we're not talking about that. We're talking about working with your life partner. Both Dave and I and Nisha and Jas have been through the struggles that come with trying to get it working well between you and your life partner, and a lot of big lessons along the way, particularly around not asking, have you paid that invoice in bed? So without further ado, here's me, Dave, Nisha and Jas. Hello, Nisha and Jas.
Oh.
And we've got Jackie and Dave here as well. And today we're talking about how to get the most out of working with your life partner in the business. And so we have Dave and I with our ups and downs and the highs and lows along the way. And we also have Nisha and Jas who have been through that same journey in their own way too. Really excited to be joined by you guys today. It's been amazing watching the journey with Castlewood Homes over the last couple of years. You guys have got so much great experience in property that over the last couple of years, you are just getting better and better at leveraging and growing. You're doing an amazing job for your investors. You're doing an amazing job for your tenants, providing amazing HMOs in Kent. And it's just, it's a privilege to be here with you because I think you've got so many amazing learnings to share.
Oh, thank you. Make that sound really great.
So we wanted to start with, where are you guys at now? Like thinking about working with your life partner. We just had a really nice chat before we started this, before we hit record, about a recent event that's gone on for you guys and how that sort of interplay worked with you when you were watching that. Maybe you could start there. Tell us what's happened and how you both perceived it.
Yeah, so we had a recent planning application for a 7-bed HMO in Medway, and we had like 16 objections. So right off the back of that, it's just like, our neighbours hate us, or the whole street hates us. They're like, we're looking at this one house and they just thinks us they're devious landlords and just money grabbing, etc. So it had to go to committee, and we had that last night, and it was really like, it was the first time that I was watching sort of a committee meeting, and I think my views on it was completely different from Nisha's. She was quite
I was quite aggressive. That they weren't really putting our point across, and how can they perceive us like that? We're trying to provide good quality luxury homes, and they're making out as if we're like trying to squeeze in and sardine people together just to make money. So for me, it was just like, who's standing up for us here? And there were a few people that did actually. So it was good to hear that side, but obviously I was getting very impatient while Jas was very calm and together.
I was just telling her to like, what's the worst that can happen? Because with sort of planning, I've got a bit of experience around it. So it was almost like, no, they should be talking about planning law. Why are they talking about emotions for? And then Nisha's getting really emotional about it. And I'm like, just
added to the fuel.
Yeah, I was like, just calm down. Like, the law is the law. Whatever's written is written.
And actually, they did say that, these guys have done everything by the book. Like, we can't argue that. They've done everything to what they should do. So actually, it doesn't matter what all the residents are saying. They've done everything how they should have. So, but after watching it for about 40 minutes, debate about whether or not we're going to get this 7th room, I think we got voted and it got approved. So we were so happy.
It was like 2-1. It was actually 9 members against 7 for the approval. So that was a good weight off our shoulder. And then I kind of reflected on it afterwards, because it was really emotional and really intense just watching this, committee meeting, and all these bad things about us as landlords. And
I think it's how HMOs are perceived. So I think we're a minority that try and take care of our tenants, make good homes, luxury, high-end HMOs. And there are a lot of bad ones. And I think that opinion is quite widely known. And I think that's what was going against us more than the fact that actually these guys have ensuited each room. They've actually made a home for each. They've actually got a communal area where people can be together. But none of that seemed to be coming out because of the perception that people had already.
And I think what's really interesting, Jas, is your reaction to that. Like, really, you were taking a very high ground in terms of your perspective in it and not kind of getting drawn into the negativity. Just tell us a bit about that, and maybe how that might have been different a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so I just now have this view, or this calmness about myself. Like, with the planning application, what's the worst case that could happen? They refuse it, and then we have to go and spend some money for an appeal. I'm fairly confident that we would have won on the appeal. And actually, they mentioned it that 90%
win on appeal.
It would win on appeal, so we'd claim all our money back. So actually, what is the loss there is the time. But I mean, if that's all that we could lose, then I'm willing to gamble that. So I had a very calm feeling, and then I also flipped the coin and said, well, these 16 objections all came to us, but what is their how do they feel about it? They're a very attacking mood. So I was like, oh yeah, they're threatened because there's this new HMO on their street, and it's more people parking, etc. So they're actually trying to defend the thing, and hence the reason for the objection. So, and
then my reaction is, the supporter in me is like, oh, we should just go over there and show how friendly we are and what we're trying to create, Jas, because they clearly don't know. And we should go over there and have a chat. And for me, I'm like, hey, give them a bottle of wine and keep them sweet, and actually show them we're not that perception of the HMO that they're expecting on that street. We're very approachable, and we're very proactive. If there's any problems, we're on it. We're not just there to collect the rent check every month.
I think it's great. You've just both got such a different perspective on the situation, and basically you've kind of balanced each other out really nicely yesterday by the sounds of it. Jas, you're being kind of more ahead, more logical but calmer and seeing the perspective, and Nisha, you're kind of bringing more of an emotion to it, which actually both sides are totally valid, but the way that you've therefore equalized each other is amazing. And that's exactly the whole point of this conversation today. It's by working together, if you can get this working well, it's the two of you together are so much stronger than the sum of the parts. So maybe you could take us back, because it sounds like you're working really well together. Though we'll do a podcast at some point on wealth dynamics. But for those of you who know wealth dynamics already, Nisha is more on the right-hand side, more on the supporter side, and Jas is more on the left-hand side, primarily mechanic. Dave and I, out of interest, I'm more creator mechanic, so Jas and I are actually quite similar. You're strong on the creator too, and Dave is much more Lord. He's the Lord amongst us, Mr. David Lord, Lord David. And so that I think that's the way that you guys have lent more into the strengths in terms of Nisha. You're more on the people side, again, probably the softer, more emotional side too, also being on the feminine, and Jas, you being more structured, process driven. As you've kind of lent into that more, that's helped a lot as well. Anyway, more on that later, but that just as kind of context. So maybe you could take us back, because clearly you are nailing it in how you work together now. Take us back to a time that it wasn't the case, and just kind of bring that to life for us.
Well, I think this was probably when we were doing our second HMO, and it was during COVID, and just it wasn't growing great because trades weren't allowed in, and we were on the property and we were actually doing all the work ourselves. My mother-in-law was looking after the kids at home while me and Jas were driving to Kent every day, trying to do all the manual labour. And it was just a really hard project to do because we're not builders, although Jas has got really good technical knowledge. And then I became almost kind of wingman to passing things over and sanding. And there was a point in the project where we were like, we're not meant to be doing this. This isn't us. And it became really hard. But I think what that taught us is having defined roles in the business. But even when we're had the defined roles in the business and we started doing that, I think even in then we were like, well, you do investors, you do deals, you do this, you do that. And it was kind of try to be very clear cut about everything. But still there were parts of dealing with investors or dealing with deals that I was better at or Jas was better at, and it still wasn't working right. So we then went back to our wealth dynamics, and I came across I think it might have been you, Jackie, that said, like, do the stuff that you're good at and don't do the stuff that you don't good at. And I think that's what now has made our roles even more efficient. Is Jas is so much better at numbers with deals. I'm fine high level, but details, it's more him. So that's what he does. Whereas I'm better at going out viewing, meeting with vendors and creating that side of it. I'm a better approach at that. So I think the main thing we've learned is do the things you're good at, because you'll enjoy doing it, rather than procrastinate the things you don't want to do and never get around to doing them.
Yeah, I was going to jump in here.
Dave is here, by the way, nothing in the background, being all lawdy about it.
I almost didn't get to talk there because you were just straight in there. What can I do?
Check out the dynamic, guys.
So you've painted a really clear picture, Nisha, of what was happening and that it was hard. What I'd love to hear is what was hard about it. How did that impact your relationship? What does that mean for you guys? Years ago, this was quite a while ago, you have this relationship going on, you're going through what is actually quite a hard time, and you've told us that and I agree, like we did exactly the same wealth dynamic split, how you're doing the roles and responsibilities, that's a solution. It puts you into your flow, and it makes everything smoother and nicer between you. So go back and just tell us what did it mean for you guys in your relationship when it was tough? Like what was it doing to you, and how did you react to each other?
I probably want to step a bit further back. Like for me, I've always seen property as sort of like moving us forward and sort of right for us. Now, I was full-time working in property as well for a large corporate. And at that time, we just had our second child, Kai. So Nisha was at home looking after Kai and the home. So, I had these big ideas and really big motivation about, we have to do property because that's going to, lead us to financial freedom. But Nisha wasn't on the same page. There was that disconnect, or that feeling of disconnect, where she wasn't on board. And it was only until we got our first HMO that I actually showed her around and said, look, this is what we're going to be doing. It kind of opened her eyes. And then also, I think I took you away on a Valentine's
romantic weekend to a property event.
You know how to treat a woman, Jas.
Going away for Valentine's Day. We need to celebrate We barely celebrate our anniversary. But I think it did help us. But the impact it was having at that point was, even though I knew what we wanted to achieve for our family and our unit, we didn't know how to approach it with each other. So it was just kind of lots of to-do lists, lots of you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And it was a lot of hard work between us, because even though I wanted to help, I didn't have the knowledge at that point. And it became really difficult because it came a very kind of blame situation. Oh, well, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And you don't care about the business enough, or, and it became really it used to excel quite a bit. And then, I used to fall back into I'm looking after the home and the kids and all this, that and the other. So it just became into this, these fights used to escalate from something did you did you ring up the builder? And it escalated into kind of, I'm looking after the kids in the home, what are you doing? And it became very extreme for a long time, because we knew where we wanted to get to, but we just didn't know how to get from where we were and to get there. So it was hard. We've always got on, but you have these arguments and then you carry on, because that's the best then, don't you?
Yeah, that connectivity was, we didn't have that connectivity that at that point. It was I said, you want to help with the business, well, you should be doing XYZ tasks, why aren't you doing them, kind of thing. And it was just well, she didn't want to do them, or she had more important things to do, and it was just that frustration cycle going round and around.
I think anyone listening to this who's working with their partner will literally relate to that. And I'm laughing at it because we've been there.
Yeah. It's funny. At the time, it is so not funny. It's like devastating and you're like hating on each other, but you're kind of like, we're meant to be on the same team, but it doesn't feel like we are. So yeah, we're laughing, but not because it was funny at the time, because now in hindsight, you look at it and like, that was like so ridiculous knowing what we know now. But at the time, it's like X:\/ no way out. Like you can't see how to get through it. Sorry, babe, I had to cut you off.
Yeah, classic. No, and I think your whole perspective on it now has shifted, and that's the only reason you can laugh at it. But I just, for anyone who is currently in that place right now, which I think a lot of people who haven't then had those realizations will be, if they're trying to work with the partners, you end up in conflict, and it's like the muddling between work and family life, right? Work and marriage. It's awful. It's awful, and that puts a strain. So is there anything like, how did it affect your home life and your family life? Was it causing any other problems for you guys?
Yeah, I think because with our children, they needed like extra support at school and things and bits and pieces. It got really difficult because we were trying to manage that, trying to grow the business, trying to do all these roles that were given to each other and to-do lists, and it became really, really difficult. And I think because we had no structure, we know where we wanted to get to, but we had no structure to get there, and it became really hard. I think we became hard on each other, on ourselves, and then it became really difficult with the kids because they could feel and vibe of us the fact that we were stressing out and that things weren't going right. So I think all of that energy was quite negative. It was quite hard for us at the beginning. But we just worked through it. We just kept going through it because that was the only best way we knew how.
Yeah, for me, it was, we're taught on a lot of, motivation videos and events that, you need to hustle, you need to work hard, there's 24 hours a day, what you're doing, sleeping. And it's that put extra pressure on me because I was working 9 to 5. Then I was being a dad, husband, but not really, because I was trying to do the hustle at that time. And I think that disconnect, like I think
why are you sleeping, Jas?
yeah. The kids, like they know me for just looking at my phone.
Yeah, so just walking around on his phone all the time, and I'm like, you can't be just walking around our hallways from room to room on your phone working. Like, there's got to be a balance.
And I wasn't separating time. Like it was just everything was muddled together. Working on the business, trying to look after the kids and supporting Nisha and things like that. And also we had a lot of external influences from like family members and other people just saying, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And again, that's just extra pressure that, it just frustrates you and just builds up.
And relate to all of that. Yeah. It's and everything just feels really hard, and then you end up taking it out on each other because you've got no one else to take it out on, when actually that's the person that you should be strongest with at that point. I think you want to say from our time going through the same thing as those guys.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, like what we talked about as a solution is scoping out roles, but that's a good starting point. But that has to go alongside this shift in attitude towards kind of you both working towards something but butting heads, because it's almost like you're working against each other to get there sometimes, to a realization. I think we had this time where you have two different personalities, two very different people, and one of you thinks one like way of working is important, another thinks another way of working is important, and then you've got the balance of what you've just said about time, like with family, or time doing other things and not working all the time, and you're going to have different ideas about that. So for us, I remember we were, Jackie's just had a different way of working to me, and we'd get into arguments just because she thought it should be done a different way.
I was right, obviously, but
but it doesn't matter what it is, but we were just choosing to argue, and that's what it felt like, right? It's like you end up looking back at it and saying, but we didn't actually have to have those arguments. Why were we having them? And we were having arguments just because we have different approaches, and that's crazy, because actually the fact that you have different approaches
is a good thing.
It's a massive strength, right? So I mean, we would and we'd have huge arguments, right? Back at the very end, and like even tiny things, and it's the same as you guys cleaning the house. It's a really simple thing. Jackie needs a cleaner house than I do. seems so straightforward, but actually that would be a catalyst for much bigger arguments on such a stupid level. And our solution on a base level to that was getting a cleaner, but actually it's not the end solution. It's just solves that one problem. And
it's like a sticky plaster, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess for me, I'd like to just dive now into a bit more about what do you feel looking back and looking at that journey from the moment you were just scoping out roles differently to who you are now. For me, there's this flip of the switch between negativity and kind of conflict and positivity and support. And that shift where actually every interaction between you can be a more positive, supportive interaction rather than a negative, conflicting interaction. What do you think helped you get to that? Because that's what I see in you guys now. I see you're very different and you support each other and everything, and you actually love each other's differences rather than seeing them as an irritation in some ways.
Want to go first?
Yeah, I think for me, well, for both of us, it was actually realizing that we're on different pages. Like Nisha was looking after the kids and the house, and I was, focusing on my job and the side and the hustle. But I think it was realizing that we're on different pages. So how can we get on the same page? And I think what we did was we just sat down, after the kids are in bed, and while we had a couple of hours, and just said, actually, where do we want our life to be, like jointly? And where does Nisha need the support and where do I need to support? And actually talking about those and seeing where the gaps are, or where we need to support and what causes those frustrations. Maybe if we can catch them early or provide that extra support from the other partner, then we can try and alleviate them.
And I think from my perspective, it was more a mindset shift for both of us. We've gone on a real big journey of shifting with mindset about how we perceive each other, our relationship, how we perceive the business, how we see our kids fitting into this journey that we're going on, and the vision. And I think by understanding the mindset of each other and actually how we want that to build with around us has been the biggest shift for us. Jas is very methodical. I'm very emotional. So we're like, we've got to put both these things into place and move that shift forward. And I think that kind of being able to understand each other from each other's perspectives, because I think I was always like, well, I want to work on the business, but I'm doing too much at the house or doing too much with the kids, so I haven't got the time. But actually I did have the time. It was just my mindset and just shifting that perspective. And once I got over that, and then you got over your bit of, how I work,
yeah,
it then escalated because, I'm not always at a desk. I'm always on the go. And that's the best place I work. Whereas Jas likes to sit at a desk, and that's where he's in flow. So I think that mindset shift really helped us progress. And then, I think then everything else just fell into place.
Yeah, we kind of set some like unsaid rules type things. Like if Nisha needed to concentrate on the cooking, then I'll take the kids. And that gave me time to spend time with the kids. So I was like, being a father to them. And that sort of like fulfilled them and fulfilled my role in that aspect. And Nisha was able to do the cooking in peace. And therefore, everyone's sort of attitude and sort of just everyone's a lot calmer because they were getting their jobs done without any distractions or any pressure.
Really great. There's one thing that I was thinking that we should definitely touch upon, which is Nisha and Dave, you guys have played a very important role for Jas and I, because Jas and I are the ones that like to go and start the new stuff and get excited for the next strategy that we're going to come and implement in the business. And I definitely, and maybe Jas, you might have been the same, I don't know, but for me and Dave, when we were kind of distracted and trying to do too many things, it was my fault. I was like the driving force behind, let's do all these different things. And we kind of eventually got to a point where we had decided what the plan was. And when Jackie got the excited shine to want to grab something, Dave figured out how to grab the reins and pull me back in, and I would listen. I feel that you guys have been on a similar journey. Do you agree? And if so, just elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think we have. Like, there's always been the shiny penny syndrome in moving over to different projects or different parts of the business. But I think because we had a very clear strategy of like, right, we're doing HMOs, this is what we're good at, we can do it with our eyes closed. You know, we're very focused. You know, I know how to look for the deals, I know how to find the investors, you know, so for me it was very clear. And sometimes Jas would look at some exciting projects, and I think we did it for one day and it was just so much extra work, and I was like, wow, this is taking up so much time. So from that day on, because we didn't do anything with that deal because it wasn't something that we had our expertise in, and from that day I was like, if it doesn't work, we're not looking at it. And I think that was the most powerful thing. So when Jas comes to me in the middle of the day and is like, oh, I found this, and I'm like, no, you haven't, and that's it. And that created that boundary between us, because obviously we could sit and talk about for a great new deal for hours. It would be really exciting. You'd go and find out from other people, but actually it was just stopping us from doing what we're good at and what we know we're good at. So I think that definitely, you know, I'm a lot stronger than Jas saying, right, we're not doing this. Whereas Jas will be like, maybe let's just try and find a different way. And I'm like, nope, we're not doing this.
Yeah, what helped me was, again, doing that vision board or that vision exercise, but for the business. So yeah, what do we need to achieve? Yeah, it's X amount of HMOs. So how I flipped it is that I need my vision to pull me towards it. So if it's X amount of HMOs, that means I should only be looking at HMOs, and therefore what can get me to that number.
And I think
it wasn't looking
helps.
at like commercial to resi or anything like that. It's just, let's just focus on HMOs, because that will get us to our life goal or the goal of the business.
And I think when you kind of narrow that perspective down, then actually naturally it just gravitates towards you, because you that's all you're focusing on. So naturally that will all come to you. But if you're like, oh, I'm out for everything, then everything will come at you, and then you don't know where to put that energy.
That is brilliant. I've got a couple of avenues I really want to explore from this, guys. So number one, you've earlier mentioned unspoken rules. Definitely want to cover some of those. We've got some as well, and I think that'd be really interesting for everyone to hear. So unspoken rules, definitely, because they were part of what made us, it suddenly became viable when we started putting down some good ground rules between us, and then we just followed them. The other one, I think, which hasn't quite, it's what I feel you're heading, is a little bit to do with autonomy and authority. So an element of autonomy within your role in the business, which obviously you have to be clear, and the scoping out is essential, but more importantly, the authority to have the say in that position. And that might be what Jackie's just said with us. We came, once we realized that the creator was potentially jeopardizing the vision. And that created, it required self-awareness, that process to go through. But as soon as we realized it, Jackie realized that she had to allow me authority to say no, and that as soon as I said no, she would accept.
Hell between my legs normally, really.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen that face on you as well, Dad. You're like, yeah, you're right, it's probably not time to do commercial to resi yet. Nisha probably right on that.
I think a story about which kind of links the two is that I have a very small window of like my hours of work, which is like most mums. You drop the kids off to school, and before you pick them up, that's kind of like your window to be like the best that you can be. And I think what happened was Jas had so many ideas and so many like suggestions, and how we can do this and how we can sort this process out and sort this out. And, you know, it was great ideas. I'm not saying they're not, they are great ideas. He'd stop me in the middle of our hallway and like ask me a question. And then it would be like, I'll be in the kitchen cooking and he'd ask me a question. I'll be doing some research on a new deal and he'll be like, ask me a question. And it was like, I was a constant, what I call post-it note board for Jas. Like I was full of them. And it was like, I had to hold all these things on me. And it just became really stressful, because then I didn't know where to put that. It was just like, oh, we have to talk about this. We have to do that. We have to do this. And then I think after a talk with you, Jackie, it was more like we had to put up boundaries. So Jas was only allowed to talk to me about deals when we have our deals meeting. We were only allowed to talk about investors when we put in an hour for talking about investors. We were only allowed to talk about, you know, what we're having for dinner when we're having a coffee in the morning. You know, it wasn't like the whole day was, it compartmentalized everything that we were doing, and it made it more structure. And then it also gave me the authority, like we were saying, Dave, to say, no, Jas, that's not the time to talk about it. And Jas couldn't get upset with me, because if I used to say no, he'd get all upset about it.
like, don't you want to know about the business? And just for the record, that they weren't physical post-it notes, they were just me just like talking.
I did dress of post-it notes.
I mean, it's just like, as a creator, like, come up with these ideas, and I want them dealt with now, and someone to deal with them. And why not we explore these straight away? So I needed to get it out of my head. So I used to post it note
to
Nisha saying, and then I would follow up her like,
why haven't you done it?
Why haven't you done it? But it was like she wasn't taking it in at that time because she was cooking or she was, in the middle of something.
So I think like once we'd established those boundaries and Jas didn't get upset with the fact that I said, no, I'm not ready. It wasn't like a cause for an argument. It was about, oh, okay, I've been intruding on her time right now. So we'll have to put it away for later. And I think that then gave me the authority to say no to stuff. And as soon as I got that authority, which was quite good, actually, when it came to things like deals, and Jas got the creator syndrome of like kind of, oh, we should do this deal. This could be like 14 flats. And I'm like, but we do HMOs. It then gave me the confidence to say, Jas, that's not what we're doing. We have to focus on this. So then authority naturally came to me and Jas in both our roles. And then I think by having that in place now, it makes us move forward a lot more quicker. We can make decisions a lot more quickly. It's not like we're sitting on stuff anymore. It's just, how do we deal with this? This is a solution and it's out. It's not like, it's not just passed back and forth.
Yeah, just a light bulb moment for me was doing what you enjoy and just focusing on that. So I could see Nisha was like, she loves like chatting to people and calling up agents and just creating that relationship. So we kind of made a decision quite early on that she does the talking and I do sort of like the numbers and the background and design element, because I enjoyed that part of it.
And then I'll take it back on when we get the tenants, because I enjoy looking after the tenants and talking to them, making sure they're okay. So it kind of, we just flipped our strengths. And when we put those barriers in place, it made it a lot easier to manage.
It's amazing. So many good examples. Like my mind is going in so many different directions. But yeah, I think that on that, like saying no authority, I don't know, Jas, about you, but when Dave started doing that to me, like my initial gut reaction would be like, no, but this is a great idea. I've got a great idea that I want to go and look at this big flat conversion or whatever. But then actually, because then Dave would say no and kind of rein me in. And actually, I would then quickly kind of go through the process of like, of wanting to push against it, to then kind of quickly getting to kind of like acceptance that actually that probably is the right thing, and then actually quickly get to kind of almost like relief, like, oh no, you're right, I don't have to go and do that now. Okay, that's good. There's a load of things that I don't have to put on my to-do list. And actually I feel like the more that you do it, the more you go through that process quicker and quicker. Like at first it might take like a week, and then it could get to a day, and then by the end it's like literally a minute that you're like, yeah, no, that was a crazy suggestion. And I really like that you've spoken about the meetings that you guys have, like the different facets of the business that you've kind of built up. And for me, the bit that's also been really powerful is like how that interrelates with like Asana for ideas, because it's like it is a constant stream of like improvements and ideas that you want to make. And for me, having like the meetings for all of the different facets of the business where I can just put ideas, and some of them aren't for now, some of them are like for like a year from now, or maybe even never, but it just means that you're like, I've had this great idea, I've got somewhere that I can put it and know that I'll come back to it. And it's just like, it just frees up headspace. And like you're saying, Nisha, it just means you can go so much faster.
Definitely, like that sort of ideas bank task in Asana, you put so much in there and it feels like a good idea, but you reflect on it a month later or 6 months later, and you've gone through a journey, and you say, like, what was I thinking then? That's never gonna, like, don't even go there. That's not on the list anymore. So you just take it off. But at that time, it's like the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, be all or end all.
So maybe we should have like a round of each saying some of the unspoken rules that we have.
Unspoken or spoken.
Or spoken rules, yes.
Some of them are.
They're like the key
agreed.
simple rules that are in place. So we can go round and we can say one each until we can't think of any more. And you want to go first?
Okay.
Mine is no talking about have you paid that invoice in bed.
That's a good one. Mine is you can't stop me in the middle of the hallway to talk about business.
Mine is not talking about business after 5.
So mine is, if you're talking about business outside of work, the other person gets the veto to say, I'm not talking about this now, and there is no hard feelings. It's just like, if you start talking, you're not in work, the other person can say no, that's fine, and that's not a problem.
And along those lines, talking about the big picture and the vision for where you're heading as a company over a dinner in the evening or a glass of wine is good, but you've got to figure out where the line is that goes from big picture strategic into operational. And the same kind of thing along those lines. The other person, whoever starts to feel uncomfortable, gets to say, that's where this conversation stops. So no problem solving of detailed operational tasks over dinner, just vision, dreaming, look how far we've come.
I think that's a big one for us, because I think I'm very good at saying, Jazz, we've gone into detail now.
Yeah, stop.
So we just stop.
I think for me, like, we have a word that we use. The boys use it as well.
Yeah.
When I'm using it on my phone and I'm not being present. So
they made it up themselves. Don't even ask me what it means.
They say gumble squash, which basically means interrupt just to say, put down your phone, and we're here, daddy, kind of thing, be present.
So yeah, the kids also are in this whole kind of, authority barrier. They want your attention. So yeah, it's kind of filtered out into the kids as well, which is really good.
Really good. Gumble squash. I like that. Yeah. Any other rules?
Yeah, another one for me would be that, because we defined roles in the business and we actually gave ourselves director status, right? I'm in charge of that. So that means that I get final say. But if Jackie's in charge of something, she gets final say. So there's always one person at the top. Even if you discuss it as equals, one person gets the final decision. And that just made life a lot easier for us, didn't it?
And also gives you authority to just make decisions day to day quickly. Yeah. It's like, that's what just feels right. Don't wait to ask. Because also, if you have to wait for your weekly meeting to ask the question, that's very inefficient, actually. Just make the decision. Like, it doesn't need everyone to decide everything.
Yeah. I mean, it does help that, we're both working for ourselves now, so we're around each other anyways. It's just like, right, we can make the decision right now.
Yeah, I just like knowing what I'm good at as well. Like, I just said, like, knowing what Nisha's good at, I said, you deal with that, and having that rule as you deal with people, and that's the game. That's it.
We've got some other great little ones, actually. Going back to the just general house life, we have basic rules, not rules, but these were unspoken guidelines. Like, literally, I hate housework, and so many people do, but Jackie doesn't like it either. So it's just very clear. Like, we have one where whoever makes the tea in the morning doesn't make the bed. It's very straightforward, but it means the bed always gets made because the other person who doesn't make the tea makes the bed, and that's it. And it just means the bed's always made.
I don't like the way Jazz makes it.
Yeah.
One there, Nisha.
I think we have a similar thing, like in the morning you always make the coffee.
Yeah.
I'll get ready. By that time he's made the coffee, I finished getting ready, and it's an unspoken rule, but it works really well. And actually it's quite nice someone makes a new coffee in the morning.
Yeah, and then depending on where we are with work, the one person will take the kids and the other person will drop them off. Or
I think that's a big unspoken rule. It's like we battle the kids together around the work as well. So if I've got something on, then Jazz will be like, right, I'll take the kids because you've got so and so investor meet or whatever, you've got to do that. So he'll take the kids, and then vice versa. If he's got something on, then I'll manage the kids. It's a very joint responsibility, whereas before it was always down to me. And I always used to try and be this person that could manage everything, because I didn't want to let anybody down. But at the end of the day, there's no shame in asking, I need some support as well. I need you to do some school runs, and I need you to take one of the kids to their clubs because I've got this on. So it's, an unspoken rule that if we've got something on, the other one just picks up and goes, right, okay, I'll deal with that.
I think, another one is don't be scared to ask for help. Yeah.
Oh, but on the flip side, I got one. Is if the other person looks like they need help, you're there to, you've got to support them, but don't think you need to tell them what to do, because I think there's this thing where you feel like the other person, it's your job to kind of somehow solve their problem for them, and so often that ends up in a situation where you actually make the problem worse because the person feels undermined and
that's feedback
frustrated.
From Dave and me, basically.
So it's like support, don't solve. Love, don't solve.
Be kind. Yeah, I think be kind. Like, I think when you're in that stage where you're kind of starting out and it all gets a bit fraught and a bit frantic, you're kind of judging yourselves for not doing a good enough job. So therefore you try and judge the other person to somehow get it off you. And that just gets into a really negative spiral. But I think as soon as it starts being like, how can I just be kind and help this other person and do that thing that they need first of all, it kind of comes back, and then it's kind of like an upward spiral where you're always just looking after the other person in just a way that just engenders more kindness, support, love. And I don't know about you guys, but we all have our days that we're just like, I'm not having a great day today, like I'm just feeling a bit overwhelmed by everything. Nothing's any different to yesterday when I felt amazing, but sometimes you just have a bad day. And it tends to be that doesn't happen at the same time for both of us. I don't know if that's the same for you, but it's great. And I know that I will back down and listen to Dave and allow him to help me in that moment. And you've got really good at doing the same, so we don't fight it in the same way. Do you guys find that it happens the same with you, that you don't tend to have your bad days on the same days?
Yeah, that's always right. Different days, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. And when we do feel overwhelmed, we just
self-care.
Self-care. Let the other person know that I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed at the moment, and sometimes you just need someone else just to, again, like what Dave said, support you or just help you get you through a few challenges. I mean, for us, we've got almost like another rule, which if we're arguing about something, it's because there's something challenging. We're either moving to the next frame or we don't understand something. So what is the actual cause for this frustration? And it's really like asking that question to both of us. Why are we arguing about, I don't know, whether we should do X or Y?
I think that's a brilliant concept though, Jas. Like, emotions are the cause of the argument, right? And as soon as emotion comes in, you lose your logic and you lose your ability to have perspective. So by asking that question, why are we arguing, you suddenly take yourselves out of the emotion, you look in at it with a new perspective, and suddenly it brings that logic back again, and you start attacking it from a different angle, which is no longer an argument. It's just like a logical puzzle.
Normally it's down to fear-based, so you're fearful of something. So actually, do you need to be fearful of it? Why are you fearful of it? And if you can tackle that, then you actually can kind of get over these things a lot quicker. And they're actually not as bad as you think they are, but we're very good at, as human beings, I guess, making things up in your head and making them worse and projecting this story in your head that actually isn't true. And then it's escalating more and more. So if you can catch yourself and be more self-aware, then you can be like, actually, that's not a problem for now.
Great. So I think it would be good to have a few, maybe like what are your other people who are listening to this, who are in a similar situation, trying to work with their life partner in some ways, your main takeaways that you'd want them to take forward? What have been the biggest lessons that you've had, and what can other people do to accelerate that journey for themselves and their relationship?
I think the vision board or the vision exercise, doing it jointly, that really aligned us together. And actually any decision that we made it jointly to say, is this decision going to take us towards our vision or not? And if not, don't worry about it. Just focus on what will get us there.
And mine is probably do the things that you like to do, because you're never going to do the things that you don't like to do. And I think that will excel your business and your relationship as well forward. Because I really think that if you don't like doing it and neither does the other person, well, why are either of you doing it? Outsource that and just get it done. There's no point arguing about it. Just, it will get done, but you just don't have to be the person to do it.
Nice. Mine would be take the time to work out the genius the other person is bringing, because so often that genius is actually also the source of many irritations. So if you can actually identify and bring to the fore that genius in each other and talk about it, be aware of it, and realize that is such a strength, then it makes it so much easier to just realize that in those moments of strain and just go, no, I'm annoyed at this, but that's why they're so great. And you flip it over, and it's just like really lean into those strengths and genius. And then that moves on to what you're saying, Nisha, with like you end up much more in your flow, enjoying your life much more because you are in your zones of genius. But as long as you're helping each other to be there and not hating on each other for something that irritates you.
I think actually it's a point that we've not made, which is along those lines, but taking the next step. I think when you are different, you have different speeds of operation. And I've seen this in us. I think I've seen this a little less with you guys, but other people who are couples that I work with, I've seen this in. One of you tends to be quick quicker to have ideas and want to move quicker, and the other just needs a bit more time to think about things and to kind of, I call it mulling, Dave's old muller, to mull on something before making a decision. And so I'm the fast mover. I have the idea, I want to move it forwards, and therefore I want to try and force Dave to be fast in his decision making, which just makes him put his barriers up. So actually getting that rhythm where there's a way to drop in ideas from the fast person, and for them to do it in a reasonably speedy way to get to that point, but then to feel happy to leave the other person to have their space to make decisions in their own time, to then come back together, to finding this rhythm, which is kind of that blend of fast and slow and ideas and thinking, that, you know, we've got really amazing at that, to the point that actually I've actually slowed down a bit in a good way, and you've actually sped up a bit, because we're getting more into kind of like a cohesion together. So I think just being aware of that, of that rhythm, and exploring that and leaning into it just makes for a much more harmonious business and life.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else anyone wants to say?
Guess it's just not easy.
No,
I don't think it's easy, and I think the journey, what you guys have described so much, is again, a lot of our episodes and stuff is about the mindset light side of getting self-aware, getting your kind of overcoming the problems and becoming a new version of yourself. This is the same for you as a couple. You got to take the time to know what's going wrong, take the effort to work out how to do it better together, and then work on that together like you would in a marriage anyway. And the results, I think anyone can do it personally. I think you just have to approach every problem with a strong dose of love, and like work out how each person can be in the happiest zone.
Definitely. And I think celebrating those wins as well, because we call it leveling up. We feel that we're leveling up to a new version of ourselves, and when we're going through that process and when we've gone through it, we're like, oh yeah, you have just leveled up, and we celebrate that, you know. And I think that's important as well.
Celebrate the wins.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of Property Lifestyle Mastery. What a fantastic conversation to be able to open up to the world. And we hope that you love Nisha and Jas as much as we do. If you want to connect with those guys, you can check out the show notes where there's some links. But go to their website, www.castlewoodhomes.co.uk, where you can find out much more about what they do, how they work with investors, and also connect with them. These guys are great on Instagram as well. If you're not already following them there, they have got their wonderful posts, so definitely connect with these guys. If this is your first time listening to the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast, a great episode to delve into off the back of this is deal or investors first, the chicken or the egg question, which you can check out on episode 16 with myself and Dave talking about how we went through that challenge of getting off the ground and starting to work with investors, and the initial problems that came up along the way. So until next week, when we release our next episode, which is going to be Dom and Dave talking about how you can really hack your creativity to get more done in less time. So until then, have a great week ahead.